He was supposed to be the greatest, the heir to Pelé's throne, the boy who carried Brazil's hopes on his shoulders and made it look effortless. Neymar da Silva Santos Jr. wasn't just a footballer. He was a movement, a cultural phenomenon, the player who was destined to win multiple Ballon d'Ors and cement his place among the immortals. At 32 years old, that dream is dead. Not because of age, not because he lost his skill, but because of something far more tragic. A series of choices, injuries, and circumstances that turned the most promising talent of his generation into a cautionary tale about wasted potential. Today, Neymar plays in Saudi Arabia for Al Hilal, earning astronomical sums in a league most of the world doesn't watch. His Instagram still has millions of followers, but the highlight reels now feel like archaeological artifacts from a different era. The magic is gone. The explosiveness has faded. And the player who once danced past defenders like they were traffic cones now struggles to stay fit for more than a few weeks at a time. This isn't just about a career winding down. This is about a tragedy that unfolded in real time while the world watched. A downfall so complete, so preventable, and so heartbreaking that it forces us to ask, what happened to Neymar? The story isn't simple. It's not just injuries, though those played a devastating role. It's not just poor decisions, though those piled up like unpaid debts. It's not just bad luck, though luck abandoned him when he needed it most. It's all of it, woven together into a narrative that reads like a Shakespearean tragedy. The golden boy who had everything and lost it all while the world cheered, then jeered, then forgot. Before we understand how Neymar's empire crumbled, we need to go back to when it was being built. Back to the streets of Mogi das Cruzes, where a skinny kid with bleached hair and impossible dreams started a journey that would take him to the top of the world. And then, cruelly, back down. If Neymar's magic ever made you believe in football as art, leave a like, because this is the story of the greatest player who never quite became the greatest. And it's more tragic than you think. Mogi das Cruzes, a city in São Paulo state, isn't where football legends are supposed to come from. It's not Rio's beaches or São Paulo's sprawling favelas. It's a working-class city where people grind for survival, not glory. But in 1992, Neymar da Silva Santos Jr. was born there, into a family that had nothing but love and impossible dreams. His father, Neymar Santos Sr., was a former footballer whose career never took off. Injuries and bad luck derailed his own dreams before they could begin. But he saw something in his son that terrified and excited him in equal measure. At 3 years old, little Neymar was already obsessed with the ball. Not just playing with it, obsessed. He slept with it, cried when it was taken away, dribbled through the house until his mother, Nadine, begged him to stop breaking things. By age 6, Neymar was playing futsal, the fast-paced indoor game that would shape his entire style. Tight spaces, quick decisions, tricks that required not just skill, but creativity. While other kids learned to play safe, Neymar learned to play beautiful. His father became his coach, his manager, his protector, and his driving force. Some would later say he became too much of all those things. At 11, Neymar joined Santos FC's youth academy. Santos, the club of Pelé, the most sacred ground in Brazilian football. Scouts had been watching him for years. They'd seen him humiliate older, bigger kids with moves that didn't seem physically possible. They'd seen the crowds gather wherever he played, drawn by whispers of that kid who played like he was born in a different dimension. But Santos almost lost him. Real Madrid came calling when Neymar was just 13. They offered money his family had never imagined, a life in Spain. guaranteed development. His father was ready to accept. But Santos, desperate and crafty, made a counteroffer that changed everything. They gave Neymar Sr. a job. They promised Neymar would be fast-tracked to the first team. They painted a vision. Stay in Brazil, become a legend here first, then conquer the world on your terms. Neymar stayed, and at 17, he exploded onto the scene. His professional debut in 2009 was electric, but it was 2010 when the world truly noticed. He scored 14 goals that season, playing with a flair that felt both nostalgic and futuristic. Commentators ran out of adjectives. Pelé himself said, "This boy will be better than me." Coming from the king, it wasn't praise, it was a coronation. By 2011, at just 19 years old, Neymar had won the Copa Libertadores with Santos and scored in the final. He was named South American Footballer of the Year. He had turned Santos into a must-watch team, filling stadiums wherever they played. Kids across Brazil bleached their hair to look like him. His goal celebrations became cultural movements. He wasn't just a player. He was an icon. But fame at that level, that young, comes with a price. Neymar was earning millions, surrounded by people who wanted something from him. His father controlled his career with an iron fist, making deals that would later raise eyebrows and investigations. Sponsors fought for his image. Parties, women, excess, all of it came crashing into his life before he was mature enough to handle it. The football world was unanimous. Neymar needed to leave Brazil, not because Santos wasn't enough, but because he'd already conquered it. At 21, he had become too big for Brazilian football. Europe's giants circled like sharks. Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Manchester United. Everyone wanted him. Everyone believed he would be the next Ballon d'Or winner, the face of a generation. In 2013, Neymar signed with FC Barcelona for $57 million, though later investigations would reveal the true cost was much higher, buried in complex deals that would haunt him and Barcelona for years. He was joining Lionel Messi and eventually Luis Suarez to form what would become the most devastating attacking trio in football history, MSN. On paper, it was perfect. A 21-year-old prodigy joining forces with the greatest player of all time. But reality is never that simple. Because from the moment Neymar landed in Barcelona, the countdown to his downfall had already begun. He just didn't know it yet. The first season at Barcelona was a nightmare. Neymar struggled to adapt to European football's intensity. He was fouled relentlessly, targeted by defenders who saw him as soft, theatrical, too focused on tricks rather than winning. The Spanish press, brutal and unforgiving, questioned whether he was worth the money. Fans compared every move to Messi and found him lacking. He finished the 2013-14 season with 15 goals in 41 games. Respectable, but not legendary. Then something shifted. 2014-15 season. Luis Suarez arrived from Liverpool, and suddenly the chemistry clicked. MSN, Messi, Suarez, Neymar became the most lethal attacking force football had ever seen. They scored a combined 122 goals that season. 122. Defenders couldn't focus on one without leaving the others open. It was football as symphony, and Neymar was finally flourishing. Barcelona won the treble, La Liga, Copa del Rey, and the Champions League. In the Champions League final against Juventus, Neymar scored the third goal, sealing the victory. At 23 years old, he was a European champion. He had proven he could perform on the biggest stage. He finished third in Ballon d'Or voting that year, behind only Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. Third. Always third. That ranking would haunt him, because no matter how well Neymar played, No matter how many goals he scored or titles he won, he was always in Messi's shadow. And shadows, no matter how successful, suffocate. The next 2 seasons were more of the same. Brilliance, trophies, individual accolades, but never the individual recognition he craved. Messi was the king. Neymar was the prince. And princes, especially one as ambitious as Neymar, don't stay princes forever. They either become kings or they burn trying. Off the pitch, problems were mounting. The Spanish tax authorities investigated him for fraud related to his transfer. His father's business dealings were scrutinized. There were lawsuits, allegations, headlines that had nothing to do with football. Neymar's camp began floating the idea, maybe Barcelona wasn't the right fit. Maybe he needed to leave to become the main man somewhere else. Paris Saint-Germain had been watching, and in summer 2017, they made an offer that broke football. $222 million, a world record transfer fee that shattered all previous benchmarks. PSG activated Neymar's release clause and offered him something Barcelona never could: to be the undisputed star. No Messi, no shadow, just Neymar's team, Neymar's city, Neymar's Ballon d'Or to win. Barcelona fans felt betrayed. Messi reportedly tried to convince him to stay, but Neymar's mind was made up. At 25 years old, he believed he was ready to carry a team alone, ready to step out of the shadow and into the light. The press conference in Paris was surreal. Neymar, draped in PSG colors, promised Champions League glory. He promised to make PSG the best team in the world. He promised that this move would define his legacy as one of the all-time greats. What he didn't know, what nobody could have predicted, was that this decision, the one that was supposed to make him a king, would instead become the beginning of his tragic end. Because in Barcelona, despite the shadow, Neymar had been protected. He had structure, world-class teammates, a system that worked. In Paris, he would have freedom, but freedom without discipline is just chaos. And chaos was exactly what Paris would become. The injuries started immediately. The pressure mounted. The Champions League, the trophy PSG bought him to win, remained maddeningly out of reach. And slowly, game by game, injury by injury, party by party, the greatest talent of his generation began to waste away in front of a world that went from cheering to mocking. Neymar thought leaving Barcelona would make him a legend. Instead, it made him a cautionary tale. And by the time he realized the mistake, it was far too late to go back. Paris welcomed Neymar like a king. The Eiffel Tower lit up in PSG colors. Tens of thousands packed the stadium for his presentation. Sponsors lined up with blank checks. He was earning more money than he could spend, living in the city of lights, free to be the main character of his own story. But Paris had a problem, and that problem was Ligue 1. French football, outside of PSG, wasn't competitive enough to prepare them for Champions League battles. PSG dominated domestically, winning league titles like collecting participation trophies. But in Europe, where it actually mattered, they kept failing, and Neymar was supposed to be the missing piece that changed everything. His first season started brilliantly. 28 goals in 30 games. He was unstoppable, creative, the best player in France by a mile. But then came February 2018, a match against Marseille, a tackle, and Neymar's 5th metatarsal bone in his right foot fractured. He missed the Champions League round of 16 against Real Madrid. PSG lost. The $222 million man watched from the stands, helpless, as the team built around him collapsed without him. It was just the beginning of a nightmare pattern. 2019, same injury, same bone, February again. This time he missed the round of 16 against Manchester United. PSG had a 2-0 lead from the first leg. They lost 3-1 at home in one of the most humiliating Champions League exits in history. Neymar watched from a hospital bed as his team imploded. The injuries weren't random. Neymar's playing style, all quick cuts and explosive movements, put enormous stress on his feet. Defenders in Europe targeted him relentlessly, knowing he was PSG's entire offense. And his lifestyle off the pitch certainly didn't help. The parties became legendary. Neymar's birthday bashes in Brazil during the season became annual controversies. He'd fly to São Paulo, celebrate for days, post it all on Instagram, then return to Paris out of shape and distracted. Teammates whispered, coaches fumed. But PSG, having invested so much, couldn't discipline their crown jewel without admitting the project was failing. His sister's birthday became a running joke. It always seemed to coincide with crucial matches. In 2020, he missed another key game to attend her celebration. The pattern was undeniable. Neymar's priorities were elsewhere. On the pitch, when healthy, he was still brilliant. In 2020, PSG finally reached the Champions League final. Neymar played well, creating chances, hitting the post, doing everything except score. They lost 1-0 to Bayern Munich. He cried after the match, devastated. It was the closest he'd ever get to the trophy as PSG's main man. The next seasons were more of the same. Injuries, recoveries, moments of magic, more injuries. His relationship with the fans deteriorated. They booed him when he partied during poor team performances. They criticized his work ethic. They blamed him for the Champions League failures, even when he was on the sideline. In 2022, PSG signed Kylian Mbappé to a massive contract extension and brought in Lionel Messi. Suddenly, Neymar wasn't even the main star in Paris anymore. The team that paid $222 million for him to be the focal point now had 3 superstars, and Neymar was somehow the third wheel again. The dynamic was toxic. Messi and Mbappé barely acknowledged him. The dressing room fractured. PSG kept winning League One titles, but they crashed out of the Champions League in the round of 16 in both 2022 and 2023. The failures were becoming routine. By summer 2023, PSG had had enough. Neymar had played 6 seasons in Paris. He'd won 13 domestic trophies, 0 Champions Leagues. He'd been injured repeatedly, partied constantly, and failed to deliver on the massive promise his signing represented. PSG wanted him gone, and nobody in Europe wanted him. His wages were astronomical. His injury history was terrifying. At 31 years old, he was no longer the prodigy. He was a liability. The only offer came from Saudi Arabia. Al Hilal offered $90 million transfer fee and reportedly $300 million in wages over 2 years. It was a financial fantasy, but it was also a football graveyard. Neymar had 2 choices: accept obscene money in a league nobody watched, or stay in Europe where nobody wanted him. He chose the money. In August 2023, Neymar left PSG for Al Hilal. The dream of winning the Ballon d'Or was dead. The dream of being considered among the all-time greats was dead. At 31, still young enough to compete at the highest level, Neymar had given up. And then, as if the football gods wanted to deliver one final cruel joke, his body betrayed him one last time. October 17, 2023. Playing for Brazil in a World Cup qualifier against Uruguay, Neymar went down. No contact, just a wrong step, a hyperextension, and a scream that echoed through the stadium. Players from both teams immediately signaled for medical help. They knew. Everyone who saw it knew. ACL tear. Meniscus damage. The worst injury a footballer can suffer. Neymar was stretchered off, covering his face with his shirt, sobbing uncontrollably. At 31 years old, having just moved to Saudi Arabia for one last massive payday, his knee had exploded. The surgery would take months to recover from. And for a player whose game depended on explosiveness, agility, and quick changes of direction, an ACL tear at this age is often a career ender. He had played exactly 5 matches for Al Hilal. 5. In those matches, he'd shown flashes of the old magic, but also clear signs that his body was breaking down. And now, earning approximately $300 million to play in Saudi Arabia, he would spend at least a year on the sideline. The recovery has been long and painful. Reports from Saudi Arabia suggest Neymar has struggled with the rehabilitation. His social media, once filled with highlights and celebrations, now shows gym sessions and motivational quotes. But the spark is gone. The joy that once defined his game has been replaced with grimness, the reality of a body that can no longer do what his mind remembers. As of 2025, Neymar is 32 years old. He has barely played in over a year. Al Hilal pays him obscene amounts to exist, but football doesn't care about potential anymore. It cares about what you can do today. And today, Neymar can barely stay healthy long enough to matter. The tragedy isn't just the injuries, though those are devastating. The tragedy is what could have been. If Neymar had stayed at Barcelona, would he have won more Champions Leagues? Would he have matured in Messi's shadow instead of chasing his own? If he'd been more disciplined, less focused on parties and Instagram, would his body have held up better? We'll never know. All we have are the numbers that tell a heartbreaking story. Career achievements. Champions League, with Barcelona, not as the main star, 0 Ballon d'Or awards. Finished third once, his career peak, 128 goals for Brazil. All-time leading scorer, yet no World Cup. Countless domestic titles that nobody will remember. $222 million transfer fee that defined a generation. For all the wrong reasons. What defined his downfall? Injuries. Repeated metatarsal fractures, ACL tear at 31. Lifestyle. Parties during seasons, lack of professionalism. Wrong decision. Leaving Barcelona's structure for PSG's chaos. Timing. Body broke down exactly when he needed it most. Pride. Wanted to be the main star. Couldn't accept being second to Messi. Neymar's story is Greek tragedy in cleats. He had everything. Talent that comes once in a generation, charisma that transcended sport, opportunities that most players dream about. But he also had fatal flaws: immaturity, poor decision-making, and a body that couldn't withstand the lifestyle he chose. At 32, Neymar isn't retired, but he might as well be. Playing in Saudi Arabia, collecting checks, posting occasionally on Instagram, he has become a ghost of the player who once danced through defenses at Santos, the prodigy who won a treble at Barcelona, the superstar who was supposed to inherit Pelé's throne. The saddest part? He knows it. In rare interviews, you can see it in his eyes. The regret. The realization that he wasted the prime years of his career in Paris chasing individual glory that never came. The understanding that the decision to leave Barcelona, the one that was supposed to define his legacy, instead destroyed it. Neymar's final days as a relevant footballer aren't dramatic. There's no heroic last stand, no redemption arc, just a slow fade into irrelevance, punctuated by injury reports and salary figures that mock the potential he once had. He was supposed to be the greatest Brazilian since Pelé. He was supposed to win multiple Ballon d'Ors. He was supposed to lead Brazil to World Cup glory. Instead, at 32, he's a cautionary tale about wasted talent, poor choices, and the cruel reality that football doesn't wait for anyone. The throne was empty. Neymar was the heir, but when he finally reached for the crown, his body broke. His choices caught up with him, and the throne was given to others while he watched from a hospital bed in Saudi Arabia. This is how legends fall. Not with glory, but with regret. Not with triumph, but with silence. Not with a bang, but with the quiet realization that it's over. And it ended long before anyone was ready to accept it. Neymar's tragic final days aren't about death. They're about legacy. And his legacy, once destined for greatness, will forever be defined by one devastating word: wasted. If this story made you reflect on talent, choices, and legacy, share it. Subscribe for more untold truths about football's biggest stars. And remember, potential means nothing without discipline. Talent means nothing without sacrifice. And being the best means nothing if you never prove it when it matters most. Neymar had it all and lost it all. That's the shocking truth behind his downfall.